Are we dancing on the graves of failed games? I am. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm not. I'm doing it with glee. I love to see it. Concord, 2 weeks after its launch, already shutting down, $200+ million up in smoke, gone in a moment. I love to see it. You know, we live in a really odd time. We've seen some games that have blown up, wildly successful games coming from lesser known studios and oftentimes even first time developers. And at the exact same time, we're seeing AAA studios fall flat on their face, making games for modern audiences, but in the end, it's just a lower quality product of lesser value that doesn't really speak to any audience. More times than not, they're representing ham-fisted attempts at propagating an ideology rather than just making a valuable product, a good game. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk about people's perception, the industry's perception, as well as our perception on why games fail and succeed. Because it's a really heated topic right now, and I feel like this is the best moment to have that conversation. We've seen breakout successes like Baldur's Gate 3, Pal World, Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, and Black Myth Wukong, where none of these games are coming from well-known established AAA studios. Hell, 2 of these games are coming from studios that it was their first time release. All the while, we've seen failed releases like Redfall, Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, Concord, and even seen considerable pushback on the quality of highly anticipated titles like Starfield and Diablo 4. The conversation around what players want, why games fail, and why games succeed has grown to a fever pitch, and I think it's due to just how polarizing the last couple years have been. In the history of video games, we have never seen 2 back-to-back AAA releases where one breaks concurrent player records and the other one removes itself from existence within 2 weeks of its launch. Black Myth Wukong broke 10 million in sales 3 days after its release, and Concord barely could muster 25,000 units sold. With the direction that the industry has been headed and how many people in both game development and games media seem to want to completely ignore the elephant in the room, it was only a matter of time before the levee broke and a moment arose where players' expectations and the expectations of the industry would come into contrast so greatly that it's impossible to ignore. The stark contrast between Black Myth Wukong and failures like Concord underscore a deeper disconnect in the gaming industry. It's not just about the financial metrics or the immediate reception of a game. It's about understanding truly what players want from their games and why some games are failing to hit the mark. These issues highlight how critical it is for publishers to align their efforts with genuine player interests. I'm going to say this again for the people in the back because apparently they're not listening. Genuine player interests and high quality execution rather than relying on formulaic approaches or misguided attempts at relevance. As the industry has continued to evolve, it's become increasingly evident that the traditional markers of success, big budgets, high-profile marketing campaigns, and strategic partnerships, are no longer a foolproof indicator of a game's potential. Instead, what we are witnessing is a shift towards valuing authenticity, innovation, and a deeper understanding of players' desires. Games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Pal World have set a new standard because they delivered an engaging experience that tapped into the core of what players were looking for in games or may not even have known that that's what they wanted. While others have been faltering by missing that crucial connection, chasing trends like looter shooters or appealing to the beliefs that are only held on Twitter. From my perspective, Concord failed at the perfect moment. Not only is it the contrast with Black Myth Wukong's success and the successes of many other games as well, but this was 8 years in the making. Hundreds of millions of dollars invested into this game. Sony came to that studio, sat down, played the game, and said, no, we're not going to publish this. We're going to buy you. Like they're Willy Wonka or something like that. That's how out of tune they are. That's how disconnected they are from reality, from the reality of what players actually want and what they're interested in today. You would think that with all of the successful games that we've seen over the last few years, it would be painfully obvious what's going on, what players want, and what we're the most concerned with. Inflation's higher than it's ever been. Games are $70. We don't have that much time or money to invest in games to begin with, so these games better be worth the money when we spend it. So our expectations are higher than they've ever been. And if you're not going to deliver a product on those expectations that meets those expectations, then you're going to fail. Your game's going to fail. And you're not going to sell anything, just like you did with Concord. For some odd reason, both games media and the games industry are trying to make sense of this, acting like it's some type of mystery, and it's not. We're telling you in plain English, we don't want it. But that doesn't stop them from getting lost in the weeds that are social politics. In recent years, the discourse surrounding social politics has increasingly permeated the gaming industry, influencing both the creation and reception of games. The terms woke and anti-woke have become touchstones in the discussion around successes and failures, reflecting on how personal ideologies and cultural commentary are now woven into character designs, narratives, and gameplay. This ideological infusion has led to a polarized audience. Who would have thought that would be bad for video games? Where some players are now celebrating the progressive elements and inclusivity, while others criticize perceived agenda-driven content. The resulting divide has not only sparked heated debates, but it's impacted sales, as games are now seen as too politically inspired or, conversely, too disengaged from contemporary issues, may alienate significant portions of their audience before their game is even released. This ideological entanglement highlights how crucial it is for developers to balance their creative vision with broader audience expectations. I came across an article from Forbes. It was written by Paul Tossi titled The Woke War, Why the Right Believes It's Dominated Gaming and TV in 2024. In the article, Paul writes, as someone who is painfully plugged into online discourse to the point I may soon just need to go live in an Arctic cabin somewhere, I have borne witness to a narrative this year in the media landscape, namely across movies and TV, where right-wing media consumers and influencers believe they have defeated woke games and shows and those who support them, while claiming wins of their own. I feel like there's a new one of these that comes up every month, and I figured that it was time to break down the perception of what's going on here and the reality of what's happening. Success of anti-woke things are claimed as scalps, whether that was the actual intent of the work or not. Failures of woke things are purely because they're woke, not because of any other reason at all, ignoring any and all other factors. This happens every time, and it's time to add them all up here and show what's going on. Prepare the cope and seethe, as they say. Paul then goes in to break down each success and failure over the last year, starting with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, saying, perception. This was a woke version of the Arkham universe in which characters like Harley Quinn were more conservatively dressed than previously. And there were things like pride flags hanging out in the base headquarters. A consultancy agency named Sweet Baby Incorporated was used in the development of the game to advise on making things overly inclusive. Reality. Suicide Squad failed mightily because it was a live service game after Rocksteady had made its entire fan base devoted to single-player superhero offerings, and not a particularly good one at that. It was a goofy concept, giving all of Task Force X members the same guns, few differences in powers, and aborting the storyline halfway through to do a live service concept which featured dozens of Brainiac copies. All based on an IP with one critically savaged movie and one box office failure in the DC Extended Universe. Supposedly, woke critics scored the game a 60, one of the lowest major scores of the year. Concord, Perception, a hero shooter that failed because its heroes were not attractive enough and they were virtue signaling by putting pronouns into their select screen. Reality. Concord started its development right after Overwatch launched in 2016 and arrived to the shooter landscape dated, with an ill-conceived $40 price tag in a free-to-play landscape and failing to meaningfully stand out from its competition. Its character designs were poor, not for hotness reasons, but because of a lacking aesthetic that other games with plenty of similarly sized and aged characters had done better. Supposedly, woke critics scored the game a 65, lower than all its multiplayer rivals. Stellar Blade, Perception. The game was a big hit for AAA newcomer Shift Up because it embraced the idea that real gamers want attractive women in their games, and they were provided plenty of fan service outfits to fulfill that desire. Reality. Stellar Blade was a solid action game on the whole and reviewed well among video game journalists, drawing an 81 on Metacritic and heralded as a great first effort from Shift Up. Helldivers 2, Perception, a game about killing bugs and bots without woke agendas. It was a celebration of the kind of patriotism the left fails to embrace in the modern era. Reality. The entire game is based on Starship Troopers, a very clear, famous skewering of those very concepts. Journalists scored the game at 82, and it has been in conversation as possible, if not likely, Game of the Year shortlist candidate. The First Descendant. Perception. The PvE hero shooter is full of attractive women, which is responsible for its surging popularity. And its live plan so far has been to introduce more attractive women to ensure its ongoing success. Reality. The game succeeds mainly because it's a well-structured looter with meaningful progression systems and endless targeted farms. It struggles with RNG, however, and the game has seen a precipitous player count drops down from 265,000 on Steam to 40,000 in a couple of months. So its long-term future is uncertain. Black Myth Wukong. Perception. Games media wanted this game to fail based on an IGN article that discussed sexism within game science in the past, and its success is a blow against woke agendas. Reality. The game is an absolutely crushing, massive hit in China where no one is considering any of these controversies when purchasing. Again, games journalists scored this game a very positive 81. Paul concludes his article with, the mental gymnastics here are always one of the following. A game considered woke fails, and the reason is because it was woke. A game that succeeds must not be woke, or its woke aspects can be explained away as not really being woke after all. A game considered anti-woke for some perceived reason, and it being anti-woke is the reason why it was a hit. A sentence or two from a single review or a specific tweet means that all woke journalists or players love or hate something. You know, believe it or not, I actually really enjoy a lot of Paul's work, his writing, as well as some of the work that he's done here on YouTube. But with that said, this is a gross oversimplification of what's going on. I understand the desire to want to throw everything into a box because you see everybody else is doing it over on Twitter, but you have to look through the veil of social politics to see what the real concerns are. And there are real concerns here. Like the direction of these games and what's motivating the direction of these games. It's all for profit. These people don't care about you. They don't care about how you identify, what color your skin is, what gender you are, where you're from in the world. They care about money. You think some C-suite executives sitting out there thinking, how can we make our games more inclusive? Well, they are, but they're thinking about that because they're trying to make more money. I think that the industry today has grown to the point where with as much money that's out there, with as much money that's in these companies and investors that are in these companies, they have to figure out how to grow their audiences even larger than they already have. And the only way they can do that is to try to go after audiences that they don't already have. But the problem is that by infusing these ideologies within your games, what's going to end up happening is you're going to polarize your audience and split them. So you're going to end up selling a heck of a lot less games because of it, because now you're dividing your audience rather than keeping it whole. Paul's not wrong. He's totally right here. These games did not fail because they were woke. These games didn't succeed because they weren't. They succeeded because they were great games. They failed because they were bad games. But you're still ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that there is a lot of ham-fisted, poor, emulated representation in some of these games that honestly makes a lot of these communities look terrible. And at the same time, when you're seeing that, you're also seeing a lower quality product that is not delivering on a customer's expectations. It's not delivering on the price that these games are being sold for. So yeah, players are going to start calling it out because it's hard not to see it. I remember, this is so long ago. It's a tangent. I'm sorry. But with that said, I was watching a Netflix series years ago, Sabrina, the remake, Teenage Witch, right? I remembered watching it when I was a kid. I was like, oh, this is interesting. The character was really pretty. So I was like, hey, let's check this out real quick. I like, trashy television from now and again. But in the show, there was an episode where one of the characters wanted to be on the boys' basketball team and basically pushed this one kid down the stairs, almost killed him, put him in the hospital. And there was no moral to the story. It was, if you don't get your way, hurt people. And I sat there and I'm like, how are you supposed to be okay with this? How are you supposed to think that this is entertaining television? It's not. It's just odd pandering from people that have no idea how to represent characters with any depth whatsoever and just want to tokenize them. It's horrible. And it's happening in video games. And it's hard not to want to call it out and be, hey, that's bullshit. I don't want that. Nobody does. When you have reviewers that are out there that are saying Black Myth Wukong, a game with anthropomorphic animal characters, is not diverse or inclusive enough, what are we talking about? I get what he's saying is, oh, because there's like one or two lines of dialogue in a review that, now all of a sudden these journalists are woke or whatever. Look, man, I'm just saying, why are you even talking about it in the first place? And to act like it's only a one-off case is ridiculous because it's everywhere. And there's so much pushback against the concerns, the genuine concerns of players and what the media wants these games to be, what the industry wants these games to be. At the end of the day, you're asking for our money. We don't have to give it to you. Asmongold recently reacted to one of my videos on Black Myth Wukong, and he agreed with me that games are both art and a product. However, he noted that the art can't override the importance of the product. That art and the expression of the beliefs of the developers can't be more important than what the customer wants, and he's right. When I look at games that have failed, I see a lot of pandering to an unidentified audience, and that's the root cause of these issues. There isn't anything wrong with wanting to be inclusive or diverse, but that's not what we have in games or media today. We have pandering and tokenism. We have self-righteous studios, writers, and actors that lack the talent and vision to be able to portray characters tastefully and holistically. They can't make inclusive and diverse media because it's not intrinsic to them as people, it's forced. In Final Fantasy XVI, there's a character named Dion, and he exemplifies a tasteful and holistic approach to representation. Dion's character is woven into the narrative not as a mere token, but as a fully realized individual whose relationships are integral to the personal story and broader plot. He is not some retconned, gender-bent character painted in rainbows. His representation avoids reducing his identity to a single facet, instead presenting his same-sex relationship as a natural and meaningful aspect of his life that contributes to the overall depth and complexity of the story. They didn't make Dion who he was because they wanted to send a message. They wrote him like that to add more quality to the narrative. It's painfully obvious, and they're just ignoring the elephant in the room at this point, but they are trying to force something onto an audience whether they like it or not, because they want to make a statement. But it's just not the way to go about it. From my perspective, this shows a severe lack in priorities that likely is bleeding into the rest of the game and its development. There is a direct correlation between these games that are poorly mimicking representation and wholly uninspired products of lower value. They do not know who they are making their game for, and as a result, they don't know what game they are making. Just last week, an article dropped from PC Gamer that was titled, "The Eagerness to Grave Dance on Unpopular Games Has Become a Bad Habit." And in the article, Tyler Wiles is talking about the failure of recent games and how social media's celebration of it doesn't add anything of value, nor is it telling the developers what's wrong or why people don't like it. They wrote, "The jubilation over Concord's low turnout," it apparently cracked the top 50 bestsellers on PlayStation Store over the weekend, a little bit too late there, "derives some degree of an I told you so sense of justice, the idea that out-of-touch, creatively bankrupt executives are cynically chasing trends, and the rest of us would have had the common sense to avoid releasing a Concord, a Marvel's Avengers, a Suicide Squad, a Gotham Knights, or that perplexing Gollum game. But it's not actually that easy to know why one game succeeds and another one doesn't. But what he doesn't understand, and apparently the rest of the industry doesn't get, is it is just that easy to see when these games fail, why these games fail, and how to prevent it. Each one of these games had players scratching their heads well before their release, telling developers what they didn't like about these games. Suicide Squad was a blatant live service cash grab, giving guns to characters that don't even use guns just to be able to sell weapon skins. Its open world design, story, character design, gameplay, and UI were all under fire well before that game ever came out. Concord quite literally is a creatively bankrupt trend chaser. I'm sick and tired of these game developers and games media trying to tell us that the sky is green. Anyone, apparently, except them, could have seen these games fail well before their release. Hell, some of us were making videos saying they were going to fail well before they even came out. Everybody is sick of the same tired, worn-out game releases. The trend chasing, the pandering, the poor quality, the price, and having people finger wag at us because we're talking about things that we don't like or saying that we're not interested in a product. Players should be celebrating when these games fail. It's a lesson to the industry to show them what we don't want and say why we don't want it. Notice that none of the games that failed were good games, while the games that succeeded were indeed just good video games. You can chalk it up to social politics or oversaturation all you want, but at the end of the day, it's quality, authenticity, and value that speaks to players. Nothing else. You know, just before making this video, I saw a tweet that had popped up. I think it's deleted now. It was from Pal World's community manager, and he was talking about how sad it is to see the state of things, how toxic things have become, how players celebrate the closing of studios or people getting laid off or games failing, and talking about how hard these developers work and how this doesn't do anything good for the industry when we talk like that. But I don't care, and I think it does. Ultimately, I do think it has a positive impact on the quality of the products that we receive at the end of the day, because I think that in a lot of cases, these developers forget that we are customers, not your friends. Simple as that. It's not that I want to see you fail. I want to see you succeed. I think that's where they get it wrong. I want to see them succeed. But when you do something that we all know that you shouldn't be doing, that's when I want to see you fail. And I think that's the other thing that they don't realize either, is that that's why players are upset. Many of these studios are studios that made some of our favorite games of all time. Many of the studios that I've seen fail over the last few years have made games that I'm so surprised that that's the direction that they're going in, and it's not a game for me anymore, and I just don't buy their products. 90% of the games that I play today are indie, because the vast majority of AAA products just don't speak to me anymore. And it's not an age thing. It's not aging out or anything like that. It's just that they're making games for an audience that I just don't think exists. I really don't. And these products that they're putting out, these games that they're making, are wholly uninspired, so contrived. It's unreal. Yet you're asking for the exact same amount of money as you always have, or you're saying that you need to increase the prices. You're frustrated, we're frustrated. Why wouldn't we be? This is our one form of entertainment. This is the one thing that we get to look forward to. I mean, there's other things to look forward to, but you get what I'm saying. It's, for a lot of people, this is their favorite hobby. This is the one thing that they always look forward to. They're always talking about with their friends. They're, watching game reveals or pre-ordering games. Don't pre-order games. Don't do that. But, people are excited for these games, and it's a gleam of hope in some people's lives that are relatively bleak. And when you stop making games for them, yeah, they're gonna be upset, man. They're gonna be really upset. We look to you guys as the ones that are supposed to be out there innovating and making games that are filling a gap in the industry that we didn't even know needed to be there in the first place. We didn't even know an experience like that could even exist. Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and it made a ton of players that had never played a turn-based RPG before fall in love with a turn-based RPG. Start playing a bunch of other turn-based RPGs and CRPGs and stuff like that. Pal World gave players an experience that Pokemon would never give them. Black Myth Wukong gave us a game that broke down cultural boundaries and made gaming, honestly, feel a heck of a lot more inclusive than it ever has, at least on a global scale. Helldivers 2 brought the boys back together. Gave us a really cool experience in a game and a theme that we didn't even think would even exist today. That's what we're looking for. Do better. Make better products. Make things that are worth our money, not our empathy. That's it. Anyway, that's all I got for the video today. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, share it with your friends. Follow me on Twitch if you guys want to catch me live. Outside of that, I'm going to play some more Core Keepers before I go to bed. I got videos next week that are probably going to be on Risk of Rain, Core Keepers, probably going to be playing a little bit of Warhammer 40k. Anyway, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, my friends, and look forward to another video as well. Peace!
Family, family, family.